IT Project Control Technical Network. So we hope to give insight about our career in project control arena, especially to undergraduates and young professionals. This is a great opportunity to have a discussions, gain opinions, and ask questions from fellow engineers who are in their early and established careers while expanding your professional network. We planned this event with 4 speakers. Unfortunately, one of our key speaker, Bert, has had to pull out at the last minute. Because of that, we didn't have enough time to replace him. So we will proceed with 3 speakers. So please apologize in advance. But you guys get more time to ask questions from other speakers during that time. So these 3 speakers from 3 different industries as well as from academia to share their careers in project control arena with you. During the presentation, if you have any question, you can put it in the chat box. We kindly request you to mute your microphones while presentations are going on. There is a panel Q&A session at the end of 3 presentations. And if you are interested in one-to-one session with any of the speakers at the end of the panel Q&A session, you can request via chat box. So accordingly, me and John will arrange breakout room for you to ask direct question from each and every speaker. Okay, without further ado, let's move to our agenda. Let me introduce our first speaker. She's Sadi Pico. Sadi is an engineering manager working for Precision Instrument company called Renishaw in their manufacturing division. Her team supports the assembly of precision products, resolving issues, and implementing improvements to maintain supply of high-quality product to customers. She is also a volunteer with various organizations like WES, IED, and also she's a STEM ambassador too. So Sadi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Talini. I will share my screen. So you should all be able to see that now. So yes, I am an assembly engineering manager, and I'm going to be talking to you today about project control within manufacturing, specifically the company that I work for, which is Renishaw. So I'll start by telling you a bit about myself. I'll give an overview of Renishaw, the company that I work for, and I'll tell you a bit more about our manufacturing environment. I'll then go through some of the types of projects that we work on at Renishaw. So a bit about myself then. I'm an engineering manager in the manufacturing industry for technology and healthcare company Renishaw. I've worked at Renishaw for about 9 years now, and I've had various roles before becoming an engineering manager, but all within the manufacturing industry. So my current team that I have are responsible for the assembly of all the established industrial metrology and additive manufacture products. So on the screen, I've included a picture of me with one of my teams, an example of some of the products that my teams support the manufacture of. So the 3D printing additive manufacture machine and one of our metrology probes. And my teams work across two manufacturing sites, so some in South Wales. So I've included a picture of sunny South Wales there, and then also in South Gloucestershire as well. So the company Renishaw then, so Renishaw is a precision measurement and technology company. We make optical and mechanical devices that can accurately and quickly measure different geometries, record it very quickly, and they're designed to do this in lots and lots of different situations. So I already touched on examples of some of the products that we make that I directly support. Renishaw also work in lots of different other project areas. So healthcare, for example, they have the neurosurgery robotic assisted system, which can be seen in the middle. And then the 2 videos that I've got running there are of industrial metrology products, which my teams directly support the assembly of. So as I mentioned there, I work in the assembly area of manufacturing. So we take components from a variety of different sources. So parts made in-house through our metal cutting machine shop, supplier bought-in parts, and in-house made electronics equipment as well. And then we assemble these into the product, we test the quality, and assuming the quality is good, we will then ship the product. So Renishaw is a high product mix, low volume manufacturer. That means that not all of our assembly processes will be suitable for automation. So we use a mix of operator assembled products as well as automated assembly. So because of that, we need lots of technical staff with lots of different skill sets to support the different types of assembly processes. So we'll use different bits of equipment, which I've shown in the assembly cell on the right there. We'll use automated equipment, which is shown in the middle. And then I've just shown a sort of exploded bomb of one of the products that we have, just to indicate the complexity of it. So in terms of directly supporting the manufacturing processes, we have engineers and technicians that we call process improvement engineers and technicians that assure that the assembly cells are running correctly on a day-to-day basis. So they would fix any tooling issues that the operators raise, they would investigate any product that fails on test, and they would use structured problem solving, Lean Six Sigma tools to do this. The larger scale proactive work that is required to support and to progress manufacturing processes, this is handled by the projects team. So we have lots of different types of projects that we look at Renishaw. These can be of varying sizes and varying timescales. So for example, we may have one project engineer working on a project for 3 months, all the way up to multiple different project engineers working with different specialist engineers, collaborating on a project for up to 3 years. Our projects don't tend to be longer than around the 3-year mark. And something to clarify about our project engineers is they cover the project management side of things, but they also contribute to the technical solutions. So their role is very much a mix of both. So first example of the type of project we might do is equipment development and implementation in-house. So the bottom 2 pictures there are examples of a rig that we've developed in-house and then associated software that would go with it. These tend to be our longest running projects due to the complexity of them. The development of the test rigs is quite specific. We want to test very specific parameters of our products, and so that's reflected in the length of time of development. What we will tend to do is purchase off-the-shelf hardware such as sensors, actuators, relay devices, and we will combine these to generate the solution. In general, as a company, Renishaw, we like to do lots of things in-house. It gives us more control over the timescales that something can be produced in, and also we can have a more bespoke solution created that does exactly what we want. It's also often cheaper as well to do it that way. So the second type of project I wanted to talk you guys through is equipment implementation, the procurement projects that we work on. So when a piece of equipment is too complex or an appropriate solution already exists, we will instead look to purchase a solution rather than designing it in-house. And I've included an example piece of equipment on the right there. So this does bring its own challenges. It means that right up at the start of the project, we need to be really, really clear on what the specifications are, and they need to be agreed early on. With in-house projects, there are much fewer constraints at the start of the project, and there's more flexibility to change the scope throughout. Scope creep in general is something that we would want to avoid with any project, but it does mean if there's a real showstopper or a real vital piece of functionality that we want to add to the equipment that has been missed, we have the capability to do that when we're in-house developing, whereas when we're procuring equipment from elsewhere, it's much less likely that that solution would be available or that we would be able to include it in the agreement that we already have with another supplier. So yeah, less flexibility, but you can get very complex equipment on much shorter timescales. Other types of projects that we would look at, I've kind of grouped under the term process improvements. So this could include lots of different improvements to existing processes. A typical example of this might be new product integration. So the picture that I've included here shows one of our newer design products. So our products that are in the early stages are assembled in what we call our nursery cells in low volumes by highly trained technicians. When we deem a product to be mature enough, we want to move it over to the production environment. And at this point, we need to make sure that the processes are sufficiently upscaled to be able to produce larger volumes, but also sufficiently de-skilled to make them suitable to be transferred to our production area and to be built by assemblers rather than highly trained technicians. So in terms of the responsibility of our project engineers then, they would manage the physical transfer, so the move between sites, and they would also manage any process changes required. So that might be rig duplication to allow capacity uplift, it might be rig modification, it might be relaying out the cell to reduce waste as per the Six Sigma principles. So that's the sort of stuff that would fall under process improvement. So I've really quickly there just run through the main types of project that we work on. I do want to just mention that regardless of the type of project or the size of project, the planning, budgeting, and good communication is absolutely vital for success in any of these projects in a busy, dynamic, constantly changing production environment. So yeah, that's a really brief overview of some of the project types that Renishaw does. As Talini mentioned, there'll be a panel Q&A at the end. But if there's anything specific that anyone wants to ask me now, please go ahead.
It's time to ask question from Sadi. If not, you can raise at the end of the panel Q&A sessions too. Let's wait a couple of minutes. See.
Looks like no questions at the moment.
Yes. Sadi, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation and very informative. So let's wait for the Q&A panel session. So for the moment, we'll move to our second speaker, Frank. So Frank is a security cleared chartered engineer with 20 years experience of project planning and project control. He has worked over a variety of business market, including infrastructure, oil and gas, defense, and manufacturing. He has worked high-profile projects like HS2, HMS Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier, and so many projects. In his current role, he's a project control manager on specific projects and managing, leading, and developing the UK highway project control team. He's a member of IT Project Control Network, and he has currently been certified as an APM, Planning and Project Control Accredited Trainer too. Furthermore, he is NEC3 certified project manager too. So he's an expert in project and control. So over to you, Frank.
Afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me fine. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to share my screen. I'm hoping you can see this slideshow now.
Yes, we can see. You
perfect.
Can put it in the presentation. Okay.
Yeah. So everybody can see the slides and it's full screen. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to, so firstly, thanks for that introduction. As I say, I'm going to say Frank McGovern. I'm going to run, and I'm here to talk to you today about 5-10 minutes about, my personal journey within planning project controls in my career, where it's taken me, tried to pass on, highlight some of the exciting projects in areas of the world that may take you if you decide to go through this career path, and answer any questions as we go, really, at the end or anything, or at the end session or at the end of the briefing. I'm comfortable either way. So I think we'll move on. So quick agenda. Shouldn't take us 5-10 minutes to run through the slides. I'll just cover who I am, my personal career highlights and the career projects that I've worked on, highlighting my journey, and hopefully at the end of that I'll answer any questions, and I'm hoping at the end of it you'll be enthused to take on a project controls journey for your own career, and understand the massive projects and the nice places in the world that can take you to, that can add to your CV as you go. So who am I? Yep, I'm currently, sorry for McGovern, I'm currently the head of planning for National Highways, Rip North's portfolio of work. So I cover all what we call major projects from National Highways, from Carlisle to Birmingham, to deal with the planning element through there. And I've got 20 years, can't believe now I can say that I've got 20 years of experience of planning and project controls. So that I'm leaving university, so that'll maybe give away the age there, but there we go. And just to highlight some of the big projects that I've worked on in my career that maybe ring some bells, small motorway schemes, the E66 dualling between Penrith and Scotch Corner, the E9 dualling projects between Perth and Inverness, Hinkley Point C, and the HMS Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier final assembly in Rosyth, just doing a couple of those elements. So just again, it's just highlighting some qualifications that are project controls journey that could take you down, and some of the elements that can open up to you based on my own experiences that I've listed out my own journey there, from leaving university 2003, running right the way up there. On your screen, Bosch, which is a health and safety, Primavera, P102, how you can demonstrate becoming a chartered engineer, and how I switched to the kind of the PM element as well, to do the fundamental project management introductory, right the way through to the advanced Primavera advanced, including risk, becoming an NEC3 project manager. And then lastly, my journey being an EMP, an approved project controls practitioner and trainer for the EPM, which, if I'm being honest, if you say to me 20 years ago when I'm starting my journey, I would never have thought I would have been able to advance so far through those elements there. So sort of taking that step back and seeing where you've came, and certainly whatever career path you go, sometimes you get a bit frustrated, but sometimes also worthwhile looking back and taking stock on what you've achieved. So some of my personal career highlights, and to indicate some of the big schemes or some areas that you may a career in project controls could take you down there are listed on the screen. Not going to go through word for word, but you can see the list of E14, HMS Queen Elizabeth, right the way through to M74 extension. And I've highlighted some of the construction sites that I've worked on, and some of the elements there for large scale infrastructure projects for the UK and beyond that I've been involved in there. Top left hand corner is a E14 dualling scheme in Cambridge. Top right is HMS Queen Elizabeth, the aircraft carrier in Rosyth. Just to put it in perspective how big the vessel is, you can see HMS Queen Elizabeth there, and then the existing, which was the existing at that point, aircraft carrier that the UK had there alongside there, to give the gravity of the size of it. And the bottom two images there, you can see there, that's the images of the reactor build at Hinkley Point C. And there what we have on the right there is the lift of a bridge section on the 54. So I think what I'm trying to demonstrate there is that project controls doesn't limit you to one area. From my perspective, they're transferable skills, and if you go off in one business unit, those skills for one business direction, you can take it through no matter what. They're transferable skills, and you can move through them no matter what journey it takes you on your career. So that's the kind of elements I've worked on in my career, but I just wanted to highlight, you come into this maybe point of career, maybe you're graduate from uni, something like that, but you don't really know what to do. I just wanted to take you through my steps to where I got to today, and hopefully, if it's not laid in front of you, you can take advantages as you go. But just wanted to take you through my own journey. I left school in '98. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. I know I wanted to do something in engineering. I studied engineering discipline at university. Rather than focusing on one engineering, I studied a course that took aspects of all areas in, which gave me a more general engineering approach rather than specifying in one area. And when I left uni, I still really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I joined a graduate scheme called for BPI, which is British Polythene Industries. And at that time, the scheme was really beneficial to me because it allowed me to get based across multiple sites across the UK, full aspect of the full business, which then started opening up what I wanted to do in my career. So from my perspective, it wasn't really until I had got into, I'd been through the school system, been through university, really got into university, really started my career working, that opened up the different areas to me that I wanted to work in. And then as I went through those areas, that's when I started to focus in on project controls and actually continuous improvement, which was that experience that BPI gave me. Like BPI, I jumped in a company called WorldMark. We'll call WorldMark at the time, you might not have heard them, but if you look at the side of your laptop, you'll see an Intel label at the side of your laptop. The company called WorldMark manufactures all of them globally for Intel, and they're a UK-based company. You might not have known that there, but that kind of opened up doors to me of global travel, implementing new planning software, project controls software, are really focusing and now started to work in planning and project controls. Left that business to move into oil and gas and the SPX, and obviously and also working on new nuclear builds for the Chinese nuclear power plants. Really, again, at that point, I'm really getting that. From this point, I've really focused in on the project controls element, and a really good exposure of some really good infrastructure projects to get on the CV. Major schemes like BP Clear Ridge in the North Sea, and as I say, working on 3 nuclear new builds in China as well, which was a very interesting to take in. So you can start to see now that I started to specialise in project controls, and it opened up this whole wide area for me. I could switch between started in manufacturing, moved to electronics, and then I moved to infrastructure, back to manufacturing and infrastructure, and opened up this whole market to me on where I could go in the world and pick the projects that I wanted to work on. And I left that business and continuing that. I worked for Babcock International, which was slightly different again. It was the defence side. So at this point now I've experienced electronics, manufacturing, oil and gas, nuclear power, and I've now moved into defence, which was good. And I worked on HMS Queen Elizabeth for a year, 18 months, as we said there before, and got really to do the final, what they call the final erect, fair and weld, working in a planning and controls element here, over multiple parties across the UK. And it's really that you really start to understand how important project controls is on mega schemes, 3 billion plus. You need to predict the outcome of the project and where and when resources are going to be required to deliver that project. I left Babcock International, moved into onshore and offshore oil and gas for Subsea 7, for a few years. We worked on, at that point I worked, as I say there, I worked on some major onshore and offshore oil field development in the Gulf of Mexico and in offshore in Norway. So I got to experience some other areas of the world that, you know, that project controls had opened up to me. Yep, just continuing on for there. Then I left Subsea 7. I moved into large-scale infrastructure projects around about 29. Forgive me the exact dates, maybe 2009, 2010. I went to work for a company called Halco Engineering, who were purchased by CH2M, who then were latterly purchased by Jacobs Engineering. And again, building on experience, I got more exposure to large-scale infrastructure projects, as that I mentioned at the start of the session, predominantly within the UK, and I progressed my career into, rather than managing large-scale project controls teams, and became the head of controls for the UK business before I left. And I left CH2M, took up for Mercedes as the head of project controls for highways. Again, large-scale highways infrastructure projects, engaging the clients, providing solutions to their project controls needs. So again, just to highlight the breadth of what a project control, where a career in project controls could take you, is that I started in electronics, went through all those in polythene manufacture, moved to electronics, moved to manufacturing, oil and gas, defence, nuclear power. As I say, I worked on each, when I was part of CH2M, I worked on Hinkley Point C, and then I moved into that kind of client-facing element as well, of providing solutions to clients and selling those solutions to clients as well, as part of that. And latterly, you know, what I am doing now, as I say, I am the head of planning for National Highways, as I say, for what their written off portfolio, and I'm managing the client and the supply chains planning function as part of their integrated project controls, really relaying back to government level how their projects are performing and predicting the outcomes of the projects in terms of time and budget. And what next for me, who knows? I'm not going to limit myself or try to predict what happens in your career. What I'm trying to highlight there is you can start off in one journey within an area in project controls. If you take that opportunity in your career, it can just expand and just explode, and you can go anywhere you want, because infrastructure schemes are going to get bigger, more complex. They're going to pull on the reality, as talking about the UK, we don't have enough resources within the UK within one business to provide them. There's multiple collaborations across industry, but ultimately at the heart of it, you need to know your schedule, your budget, and your risk to manage that project. And that's what the opportunities that project controls can give you across a variety of different industries, and can take you some nice places in the world. And work on some big projects in the billions of pounds. So happy to answer any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen if I can figure this out. I'll stop sharing my screen in a second, but I'll put my LinkedIn page here if anybody wants to ask me any questions directly. And I've left my email address there, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that we have at this time.
So we've got a couple of questions that came in the chat box, Frank, but I think one was for Sadie also, and then we've got a hand up from Varun. Shall we go to Varun first to ask their question, and then we'll come back to the two that are in the chat box. Varun, over to you. Can you unmute?
Thank you. Thanks, Frank. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks. Right, I'm based here in South London, and I have worked on some of the projects and some of the companies you mentioned. HSE, it's very interesting. project control. I recently did a project management course at Cranfield School of Management. And it's very interesting for me to know there was an article shared by the professor that roughly 40 years back, there were few reasons listed why some of the projects either gets delayed or gets cancelled. Now, 40 years later, I mean, obviously London Olympics was a great example, and now HSE too as well. So having all that experience, knowledge, skills in the industry, for the project controls, then why we still lack in controlling? That really interests me. Are we not learning from the previous experiences, or how could we get better, please?
Are you referencing HS2 or just a general question? Sorry, is it a general comment or is it in reference to HS2 in particular?
It's a general comment, but as I said, from London Olympics to HSC2, there've been many. Well, I'm from energy sector, so it's whether we see within UK or I have worked globally as well. So there are so many big projects like Sydney or Opera, if you say that happened so many years back. Some of the mistakes we made there, we made similar mistakes here on HSC2 as well.
So I think there's a lot of big things. There's a lot of things. HS2 is a special case, and I could talk forever on HS2. I think in general, there's always a mix-up communicated between budgets and funds. What's communicated is an estimate of a budget at say day one, which politics and politicians etc. may wade into. The budget is the figure that's released. However, what it doesn't tell you is the funds that the government has put to one side to build the scheme, if that makes any sense. So it's all about understanding, in my mind, the difference between budget and funding. Furthermore, there's always things that happen down the line, and that budget figure that may be communicated may be subject to XYZ risk, and elements that is communicated internally, externally, etc. might not want to politically. Infrastructure itself is a very politically driven machine, in my view, and they may not want to communicate what risks that budget is subject to, and the risk budget they've allowed for that if a risk occurs. Furthermore, there's other elements that are just there's just things you can't legislate for. For example, well, the current situation we're now with inflation. 2-3 years ago, even longer, you couldn't even legislate for inflation on construction costs at 13-14%, for example. And when you're on a scheme at £1 billion, that 13-14% can significantly increase dramatically overnight based on things like that. So I think there's a whole element. I also think there's an element internally as well of not listening to the data. The data is telling you this is how your project's performing. In my career, in my business, a schedule tells you this, for example. People ignore the data and go, no, that's never going to happen, and don't listen to the data early on. So there's a whole aspects of it, but project controls should give you that early warning as to when things are going wrong, and give you that trigger that where you want to take steps to correct the trajectory of a project, for example. But there is a big mindset block on I don't believe the data. So there's a combination factor of a number of things, Evelyn, and I hope that kind of aids your understanding there.
Thanks, Frank. And I completely agree. I think communication is the key there. Now, I don't work in controls, but I think project control is one of the most important department in any project you talk about. There's another question, if nothing else is there. just a very quick one. For project control, you did mention the performance and all, and I completely agree. Project managers, they don't want to hear all the time, or they don't rely sometimes on. Yeah. But are we, for example, we'd go for EV, the on values, the performance, the graphs we put together for project controls. Are they not almost always out of sync, out of like behind? I don't know, depends on how big the project is or where the project is located. But it could be like a month or at least 2 weeks old based on the data, because it takes a lot of time to gather all the data and put together. Do you think that's right?
Could be that there could be a lag of 2-3 weeks pulling information together to show what it's saying. But again, if you're working on a £1 billion scheme at 15 years long, what does a lag of 2 weeks mean in that instance, so to speak? So it's yeah, you could have a lag of generating data from all these construction sites, but if you're working on long-term schemes, 10 plus years, billions of pounds, for example, how crucial is that 2 weeks lag, so to speak, in the grand scheme of things? It should still give you an indication of where your project is going and performing, forecasting forward.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. There's one question I've posed. It could be personal, but if you get the chance and if you decide to take it, I will be much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Shall we wait to the panel discussion at the end for that? I have noted, I've got a list of questions. There are a couple of questions, but I think in the interest of time, Talini, we should move on to the next speaker, and we'll ask the questions at the end.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Frank, for that interesting and inspiring presentation. So let's move to our third speaker, Uchina. So he's a computer scientist and a cybersecurity expert. He's a lecturer and researcher in the cybersecurity at the School of Science and Mathematics, Kelly University, UK. He leads and supports the coordination and delivery of several research projects in cybersecurity and digital transformation involving multidisciplinary teams of experts from the academia, industry, and government. He's also involved as a volunteer with various organizations, including Into Science UK, IET, and as a STEM ambassador. He's a member of Executive Committee of the IET Project and Control Technical Network. So over to you, Uchina.
Thank you very much, Talini. Just want to confirm, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you very much. So let me try to share my screen, hopefully. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Right. So let me get myself on track. Okay, can you confirm that it's the outline page you can see on the screen?
Yes, it's our
okay.
page.
Thank you very much. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Again, happy to be here, and welcome to this. Really been interesting conversations. I've been listening and learning as well, because I'm actually in a learning and coming from a learning environment. So just like Talini has said, I'm not going to bore us with introductions about myself, where I'm coming from. We're going to see that even as part of what I'm going to be talking about. So, but for today, just a little bit of pointers about what I would be talking about. I'm going to be talking about my role, my qualifications, my career journey, projects and partners, skills and personality traits, and a few bits of how project controls have actually been of benefit to me and my projects and my colleagues in the work, in what we have been doing and what we are still doing. And finally, a couple of advice that you may find helpful. So just to proceed, So my name is Uchenna Daniel Ani, as has been mentioned. So I'm a lecturer in cybersecurity at Keele University. While doing that, I'm also involved in full-time research in the university. Also in my focus area, which is cybersecurity, I've been involved in a couple of research projects that we would see I'd mention. But a bit about my role is that, so I'm responsible for leading the MSc cybersecurity program in the university. I am also involved in coordinating module reviews and redesign within the cybersecurity and data science areas of the modules of the courses and the programs, both for undergraduate and the postgraduate levels. I am also involved and I'm responsible as a lead in evaluating student research projects in terms of ethics and whether they do meet the requirements. And then I also lead and manage a couple of internal projects as well as external research projects. So my qualifications, just quick there, I've got a PhD in industrial cybersecurity. I've got an MSc in computer security and digital forensics, and then I've got a BTech in computer science. And then I'm also a fellow of the Higher Education Academy of the UK. I've got full membership, and I am a member of the Executive Committee for Project Controls within the IET as well. A run through quick about my career journey. So I started off into projects and more specifically exploring controls, even when I didn't quite understand what they really meant technically. I later did, as I moved along the line, started off in a couple of projects, managing and controlling activities within projects, far back as 2009, 2010, when I was living undergraduate level degree. Then managed a project for setting up an internet and broadband connectivity cafe that involved a lot of activities, building the estate, setting up the computer networks and all of the networking components, as well as setting up the operational functions of the entire cafe. So I saw that during that period, some of the activities I did, which today I've been able to identify, I thought they were all part of project control components, were around risk assessment, task monitoring, and cost monitoring. And then I moved on from there into studying, and as part of my studies, I also managed a couple of projects. One of the key ones I thought to highlight was around developing an educational showcase for the University of Bedfordshire. That was where I studied then. I worked in a team of 4 people, and we were tasked with developing a video showcase, an audio, a slide, and a report that covered content around virtual desktop infrastructure. So some of the activities of that project included me doing, because I was the project manager, I also doubled as the person responsible for control. So there were lots of activities around scheduling, around task monitoring, cost monitoring, risk assessment, and of course, reporting. Eventually, I moved up to that. And then after I left there, I got the opportunity of moving on because I wanted to study more. So I had my PhD in Cranfield University. Interesting to hear someone here who has had his MBA, his project management study in Cranfield. Cranfield is a great place. We can talk about that later, Varun. So that was where I had my PhD. And then, of course, for those of us who have, and those of us who will be, so PhD, it's a time of very rigorous structured study where you're involved in lots of activities for research purpose, and you're required to develop things. Especially in this case, it's often the case that you will have to develop or project an idea or something that is almost new. So there must be a contribution to knowledge, something that wasn't there before. And so from the ideas of developing the proposals, writing out a design methodology, carrying out the activities of the project, writing up progress reports, I had to go through a couple of activities that I thought also involved control. And that was the point where I began understanding clearly what the difference between project management and project control. So there was the aspect around ethics checks, task monitoring again, cost, risk, activity monitoring, and all of those. And then I moved up along that line and went again right after my PhD, I've been involved in a couple of projects as a research fellow at the University College London. I have been involved in a couple of projects like I've shown on the screen, as you see. So there's the Alliot project, Analytical Lenses for Internet of Things project, where we tried to look at the challenges of the adoption of Internet of Things in critical national infrastructure. And we're developing solution models for analyzing security threats and risks and for profiling solutions. I did the same project around IoT in control. That is specifically IoT in manufacturing. And then we looked at Thuva and then ISCTI's project. So these are a couple of projects I have been involved in that involved lots of collaborations from both academic institutions, other academic institutions apart from mine, as well as industry partners, government partners. And I tell you, it's quite interesting when you're doing a project and your team is comprised of people who are both academics and they are professionals and they are lawyers and they are engineers. Really very interesting. Project control is a key tool that's going to do a lot in those kind of projects. So I found that really very useful. And then moving on, quite more recently, I have moved from University College London. Now I work in Keele University, like I said. And I am now involved. So I have completed 1 or 2 projects and I am involved in some projects that are currently running. And I use lots of ideas and lots of components and concepts of project controls to manage most of the projects, all of the projects that I am involved in. And so when it comes to design methodology, the engagements, research task executions, progress reporting to funders of the projects and to advisory and committee members, and then even the development of publications, we all have to structure them into controls. And so we have things like task scheduling, building work packages, reporting to funders, and risk management. And that gives a just very short recap of how far, how I have progressed in my careers. Obviously, you would see that I am coming from the academic and from the research perspective. And it is from this perspective I am discussing, I hope to talk about project controls today and the benefits. And so these are examples of some of the projects and examples and some of the institutions that have been involved in our project, in the project I am currently running. So all of the projects I list here are currently running, and they are a combination. So most of all of these institutions here are part of 1 or 2 of the projects, as you would see. And it's really interesting where you have to think, have people coming together, different ideas, different skills, different expertise, and different understanding and languages, and you have to be able to manage them in projects. And controls would really strongly help in trying to ensure the success of those kind of projects. So having gone through all of those, I like to think of myself in the light of certain attributes that I think that over time I have built or I have developed. Some I have learned from others, some I have built from experiences, some I have built from mistakes that have happened, for example. So leadership, problem solving, team working skills. Now, all these are examples of skills that I think that would really help for those of us who are thinking into moving on to project controls over time, because you would find that at some point you would have to draw from 1 or 2 of these skills to be able to address certain issues that you would be confronting you. I just wanted to share this also for an example. Personality, leadership, and career test assessment is something that I always encourage you to do, especially if you're a starter and you're moving up. You want to understand more of what are your strengths, attributes, qualities that you even haven't thought about that you do have. And then the ones you think you have, but probably you haven't thought about how much quality they are, how much strong they are, and the ones you really need to develop that probably are those ones that you've got weaknesses. So I decided to share this link because I often use this over a period of time to see how much I have improved after engagements, after interactions, and after projects over a period of time. So this is called the Myers-Briggs-Young typology. And you can follow the link. It's just a range of questions that you would answer. And then it begins to give you an idea of where are your strengths and where are your limitations and what areas do you need to improve, for which if you do identify, I might be able to help you preparatory to a very strong and a very good career in project control. So for this morning, before I went to this, I checked again, and this, what I present on the screen is a result of my personality test for this morning. This wasn't like this before, but this has kept me thinking, for example, that I'm, in terms of ENFJ, that is extrovert, intuitive, feeling, and judging. So you may want to try this as well and see what does the result turns out for you. Is there something you're going to learn to this, and how will this help you preparatory to moving on to that career in project controls, or even in project management, or in any other careers that you think would be interesting? In terms of in my research, I also thought to share a few bits about how controls has really helped in my projects so far. Generally, my view, and this is my definition or my opinion, understanding of project controls, having gone through these processes for a couple of times, that's a process that encompasses resources, procedures, and tools for planning, monitoring, and controlling all of the research project lifecycle. And this relates to every other kind of project, just like my colleagues have mentioned earlier, regardless of what project you're involved. Is it construction, and is it manufacturing? This project controls covers aspects of time, cost, quality, communication, change, procurement, and human resources. All of this encompasses. And so I was going to say that over the projects I have done so far, controls in this research-based project have helped me a lot. And some of the benefits I've been able to achieve in applying some of the understanding the concepts of controls and the tools is, one, lowering the cost of some of the projects that we have done. Being able to establish a clear schedule and timeline is something that controls has helped me to achieve. I've been able to also use it to actually estimate clear budgets for every project, and also to be able to keep me within that predetermined project. So often you find that most projects, if the costs and the budgets are not properly done, the chances are very high that you're going to overspend, even though you've got a budget. You begin to utilize contingencies. And so for me, that has been very helpful. Project controls has also helped to motivate me and most of my project teams on the progresses we are making. And as well as it's helped us to monitor and to address potential issues in relation to risks. And then another thing it's helped us to do is to be able to keep us, engaged and fulfilled even as we progress in the project. Examples of some of the components and tools that we have used, for example, in the past, like I put in blue, cost management plans, Gantt charts, key performance index logs, risk management plans or logs, and responsibility assignment matrices or racing metrics are very useful tools that have helped me, which I think that these are very good tools you would want to use by the time you find yourself moving on to this area of controls in order to maximize the outcome. Yeah, almost rounding up now. So in the end, I've used standard common project management and control tools to be able to keep and to control my projects. So I've already mentioned most of them. These are some of those tools, just in case you're seeing them, you would want to, if you haven't used them, it'd be interesting to begin to have some hands-on experience or reading about what they look like and how you can use them. However, in terms of best practices for control efforts in the success of projects, I think that planning and monitoring is very crucial. Aligning projects, with organizational goals or funder goals, as in the case of research, is very crucial as well. Management stakeholder engagements, their buy-in and support has also been something that has helped me when it comes to control in projects. And again, project control processes needs to integrate several disciplines. And so you want to think about work package and activity planning, support and cost estimates and budget, strong documentation and reporting controls, compliance with ethics, approvals, and responsible research practices. That's in the case of research projects, because that's where I'm coming from. Then identification and resolution of risks, integration with the project management or the project manager, feedback and reporting, budgeting and forecasting, and then performance checks and monitoring. These are some key best practices that have been very beneficial for me, and I think that would also be very helpful. My final page, I would say that project controls has contributed significantly to okay, my ability to achieve a sound execution of most of the complex projects or the portfolios of projects that I have managed in time, on time, to cost, and to quality. And it continues to form the foundation of the successes for most of my projects, and I ensure that I go along with it. So if you are considering a project, considering a career in project controls, I will say that one, it is very good, it's a great idea, so go ahead and do it. Two, ensure that while you're doing it now, scheduling work activities and more packages is going to help you to be more effective, identifying and defining amount of time and spending each of those activities or stages is also very important. You will do that. It's also important to be able to create intermediate milestones to help you learn whether you are on schedule or whether you're making progress or otherwise. And then I would say on a personal base, be very curious, ask lots of questions and find out all that you can, especially from those who are much more experienced and from those you'll be working with. Now, again, train, increase your competency, get certifications in the areas that you think would be very worthwhile. And while you're doing that, never ignore or trivialize engagement with others, project manager, project controller, and project team members. Engagement, continuous communication is very important. Develop a good understanding of the processes in your role, the systems that are working within your organization, and most importantly, be confident to challenge or to put forth ideas that will help you or that would improve the project. And I'd like to stop here, and I hope that you found this very useful, but that is a bit about me, my experience, and how project controls has helped me. I'm happy to take up many questions, and thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions. But I've got my contacts here, supposing I'm happy to take any further questions or any further follow-ups. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Vijana, for that wonderful presentation. So I think we have a question for you from Varun. So in your presentation, you mentioned some tools. So is there a website listing different templates for these tools?
Okay, so well, I am not aware of any very specific website that gives you a complete outline of all of these tools. When you go online, you're most likely to find several websites that give you different versions. Also to say that there are no, the templates or the structure for most of these documentations is not cast on iron. So while one way is to think about learning or looking at some of these project templates. So for example, if it's a risk management plan, you want to say, look out for examples or samples of this kind of documents. You will see different ranges because different disciplines and different organizations may have different versions and different templates. So depending on where you are working on or where you're coming from or what type of project, you may want to see which is the one that is typically applicable. Now it also means that you can also improvise and you can develop your own. All that matters is being able to capture the key basic information that is required for that. However you decide to structure it is not much of a very huge problem. I am happy to share some of those templates I've got if we can talk this offline, and I'm happy to share subsequently. And I'm sure some of my colleagues that have talked here also have got lots of templates that they would be happy to share with you, if that would help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question from Anthony. It goes to Sadi. Sadi, Anthony asks about, can you explain on cost estimation in the manufacturing setup?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Was this
Anthony asks about, can you explain on cost estimation in the manufacturing setup?
Yeah. So in terms of the cost of the project to the business, we would consider the labour cost, so the cost of the engineers, project managers, and everything like that. And we would also consider the capital cost, so how much money we're going to actually be asking for from the business to spend on things from other suppliers. So we would estimate that to start with. We would then look at the cost benefit that the project will deliver. So we would look at the reduction in build time, and we would also look at the reduction in scrap that's made in a manufacturing process through the manufacturing changes. And then what we tend to do is calculate a ratio of that and use that as a really gross indicator of which projects are going to provide the biggest benefit for the least money, and then we would tend to prioritize those. In the manufacturing environment, there's lots of other factors as well as cost that we would use to prioritize projects, but that is how we would cost assess both the benefit and the outgoings for a project. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. So next we have a question from Varun again. So I would like to divert to the Frank. So Frank, could you please address this question? So please suggest some of the certification you recommend to get if he wants to move to the project management.
Project management qualifications, it's more kind of formal qualifications and practical qualifications. For me, in the project management space, it's more aligning to the EPM elements, and looking at my recommendation would be to look at the EPM journey right the way through that to chartership. I hope that helps.
Okay. Yeah. So we have another question to Sadi. So what are the most important skills for a manufacturing project manager to have?
Yeah, good question. I would say because manufacturing is such a dynamic environment and the volumes of what we're making can change, and that consequently changes the amount of benefit that a project may deliver, I would say communication, strong communication skills are probably the most important thing. So keeping all stakeholders informed and up to date with the most relevant information, and also reassessing the benefit of the project to understand within manufacturing changes, does it still make business sense to continue with the project in the form that was originally scoped? So communication, I also think being driven and delivery focused are two other skills that we would really look for in manufacturing. Yeah, I think they're the main two.
Thank you, Sadi. So another question we have, it goes to Frank. So how can it be challenging when you apply quality control into your projects?
I missed that one, Talini. What was that?
It asks, how can it be challenging when you apply quality control into your projects?
Well, there's always the unknown, isn't there? You know, projects are. It's not repetitive manufacture, so to speak, isn't it? It's you're doing something once, and you know, environments can change, so to speak, at the drop of a hat. You could assume ground conditions could be one thing, and then the next day you go out there and you do your ground investigation work, and they could be another. So and that's where the risk management comes in as part of project controls as well. So it's pulling the time, budget, and risk element together as an integrated project controls to try to give you that clear path on how the project is going and understand that trajectory.
Okay, and so Uchenna, we have another question. So in your presentation, you mentioned some project controls like time, cost, procurement, human resources, and so on. So what is the critical project control factor you identify in the cybersecurity projects?
Sorry, could you say that again? I didn't quite get.
Yeah. So in your presentation, you talk about some project controls like time, cost, procurement, and so on. So what is the critical project control you identify in cybersecurity projects?
Well, interesting. Cybersecurity projects, critical control points. Okay, so I think I'll just use example of the few that I have come across lately. So one of the key control points issues that I have come across in my cybersecurity project has actually been around so I'm juggling to know which one to be able to mention now. So for example, I think one of the key things that I think I have come across in the project has got to do with costs, for example. In most cybersecurity projects, what we tend to do is part of our cost management and our budgeting, we make provisions, for example, for the development of tools, for example. So it may sometimes, some of the cybersecurity projects I have done has involved the development of test beds, cybersecurity test beds for addressing cryptographic environment and for testing the feasibility of certain type of cyber attacks and their impacts on an industrial control system environment. Now, cost has been a major challenge because most often what we find is some of our researchers go out and they engage in, or they contract and they buy or they get purchases or get involved in the use of certain tools that cost more than what we have provisioned for them, for example. And then often what you find is that people come back and they begin to make submissions based on what has been done, even though so the key thing is there's lots of effort to try to achieve the objective, even outside of what has been provisioned. And so what I have often found is, so in the end, part of what we keep doing is to ensure that we maintain frequent follow-ups and meetings and checks to be sure that what our researchers, specific team members are doing in terms of addressing any specific task is in alignment or does not fall out of what we have provisioned. And then what we typically do is have those meetings to ensure that if they are having issues with certain tools that address that, we look for alternatives, for example. And if possible, sometimes we'll have to subscribe to using open source tools to be able to address certain cybersecurity solutions, because there are lots of them out there, but most times you don't know them because you haven't given thought to them or you haven't searched yet. But coming together and understanding those challenges, for example, helps us to be able to draw from the wealth of experience of even the much more experienced people. And I don't know if that helps or if that answers your question.
Thanks, Uchenna. So that's all the question I got here. So I will hand over to John to wrap up the session today.
Thanks, Talia. Yeah, there's no more questions, and no one has asked for a one-to-one in a breakout room. So I think it's timely to wrap up now. So I just want to firstly thank everyone for joining us today. There's been some really interesting questions and a lot of engagement. Thanks to our speakers. It's been fantastic to hear your individual journeys. It's really great. I've popped in the chat box a link to the CPD certificate, which has been uploaded online for you to download. I've also popped a link further up in for a series of webinars that we've done in the last few years that give the basics of project controls. But because it's so fun, there's a lot of chat going on, I'll drop an email to everyone that's attended today with those links, just so you can go back and watch the webinars on demand if you wanted to know more about our series of webinars. The last thing I just wanted to say is if you want to get involved in the Project Controls Committee at all, please just drop me a line, or you want to know anything more about the work that the committee does. We are going to be coming into the period of time where we start planning our activities for 2024. So if you do have any ideas, thoughts, suggestions for things that we can look to do, then again, please just drop me a line. My last thank you will be to Tanini for organising this and getting it all galvanised today. It's been a long journey to get to this process, and as Tinny said early on, we did have a fourth speaker. We're really sorry that he couldn't join us today. He was from the aerospace industry, and unfortunately he was called away work related. So we do apologise. The session has been recorded, so I will also send a link so that you can go back and watch it on demand if you want. So with that in mind, I think I will wrap up and say thanks once again to everyone, and we'll say goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.